Hi Year 10, Mr. Tapley here for your next lesson of Year 10 History. This lesson we are looking at reviewing the feedback from the Sem 2 World War II CAT that we completed in our last area of study, the World War II source analysis, and reflecting upon our strengths and areas for improvement. Success criteria is to identify areas for improvement, develop source analysis skills, and reflect upon our individual goals and needs. It might seem a bit odd to time travel and look at the CAT from last area study many weeks ago, but since the CAT is the exact same structure and the exact same type of questions, the same skills that you'll be using in the immigration CAT on Friday, I thought this was a good time to look into the feedback in a bit more depth to help you prepare and review for your CAT. So, what I'll be doing this lesson is working through each question in the CAT, some of the common errors, recommended responses, offering a few Tom Tapley tip-top terrific teacher tips with a bit of alliteration for the future. And a reminder again that the CAT is this Friday, period 5, October 9th. Any questions or concerns, please let me know. Hopefully before the CAT. But yeah, in general, I would say that students performed well in the assessment. The errors that did occur were not significant ones, and they can be addressed easily by carefully revising before the next CAT, identifying key instructional terms in each question, so knowing the difference between an explain or an identify question, and adding a few details to each response. I'd say that was the biggest issue, was just a lack of detail in some of the responses. In a small CAT that's only worth like 20 marks, every mark counts, and every mark that you lose is going to impact your ability to do well on the CAT. And really the difference between getting 3 to 2 marks in one question or 7 to 8 marks in the extended response, just a few extra sentences, a few extra examples, statistics, arguments, etc. But that's what I'll talk about when I review each of these questions. Just a reminder as to what our CAT looked like. World War II source analysis. We had the visual source here, source A, propaganda poster ringed with menace. Had a few questions, 2 text sources. Australian Prime Minister John Curtin, and that was a letter he sent to the US President, and then our extended response down the bottom. So, I'm not going to go into much detail about question 1 because the majority of students did get that question correct, and I think the students who didn't know what they need to do to fix that question in the future. But I will highlight question 2 here. So looking at this poster, identify 2 features in the source that indicate Japan is a threat to Australia. And why I am highlighting that question is because most of y'all did very well on that question. So I thought I'd highlight a positive as well as some of these areas for improvement. So in this question, a number of students correctly connected the source to the visuals and the text within the propaganda poster. So the language they were using, the pictures of the Japanese warships, etc. So I've given you an example of what a strong response might look like. But I wanted to highlight that one, that question there, because that was a very big improvement on the dev. Again, this is going way back in time, but the World War II dev about the Holocaust in Hiroshima, that was an area of concern. Those identify questions were using a visual source, and y'all did much better on the CAT. So I wanted to highlight that. Question 3, I've got it written down here. I couldn't even see, it's so tiny. I'll just go to the actual CAT. Question 3 I wanted to highlight though, because this is one of those tricky ones where a lot of people got 2 out of 3 marks. So outline the message of this source, that poster, and the impact the source is intended to have on its audience. Wow. Technology is not my friend. Question 3. The majority of students answered the question correctly. However, it was just that last sentence of information and detail. Important when you are taking these tests, consider my perspective, consider the teacher's perspective. How is Mr. Tapley going to allocate marks? Look at what you've written down, and can you really look at each of the words, each of the sentences, and say, there's a mark, okay, I've got 3 marks, moving on. For this question, I gave 2 marks for outlining the message and the impact, and then 1 mark for identifying the audience. So a lot of people forgot to tell me, who is this targeted towards? Or a lot of people very briefly told me, this is the message, and you were correct. You just didn't go into enough detail. The message and the impact, that was 2 marks. A 3 mark question, consider where all that information is coming from. Question 4. This is looking at the text sources. Scrolling down. Text sources here. Question 4. This was an interesting one. I didn't think this would throw off a lot of people, but I guess it's a Australian slang or English slang term that threw people off. I don't know. But what does Prime Minister Curtin mean when he says that our honeymoon has finished? 1 mark question, but a lot of people got this one wrong. We did provide a glossary at the start of the CAT that told you the definition for the term honeymoon, for those of you unfamiliar. But it's important to read the entire source carefully and consider the context for this question. So some of y'all said he meant that the honeymoon had finished, and you just gave me the definition for a honeymoon, which was almost enough to get a mark. It was an easy question. But what we were looking for there was honeymoon, at least the definition for it, is safe. It's the safe time. And he said that the honeymoon has ended. Changes in the war were impacting Australian safety. So that was what we were really after in this question, was that the safe part of the war had ended, and now it was about to get real. It was about to get real dangerous, because Singapore was the last line of defense, and now that it had fallen, Australia was in great danger. So some of y'all just had trouble with that question. Don't stress too much about it. 1 mark question. Question 6 up. Again, the main issue here was detail. Students received 1 out of 3 or 2 out of 3. You needed to include statistics, evidence, dates, causes, impact, etc. Needed lots of detail for this question. Question 6 was using the sources and your own knowledge. So when it says your own knowledge, that's a hint to you. Chuck in some of this, because you can't get statistics on how many people died in the Battle of Singapore, the fall of Singapore, from this source. So when I say your own knowledge, that should be a highlight, a big red flag that says, oh, Mr. Tapley wants to drop some facts in here, some details. Explain why the fall of Singapore was a significant moment in Australian history. Again, 3 marks. I can see own knowledge there. I can see explain, which means I need more detail than just an outline or an identify or describe. So again, issue was detail. Y'all know what you're talking about. You just need some more information. So you needed to really talk about the threat to Australia's security, plus this Australia-USA alliance. A lot of people talked about just one of those 2 aspects of the fall of Singapore. It was such a significant moment in Australian history because 1, oh crap, we're in danger. What's that meme? Chuckles, I'm in danger. And also, this started the Australia-USA alliance. So friendship ended with Britain. America's my new best friend. Question 7. This goddamn extended response question. I said the exact same feedback. This is what was frustrating. Question 2, y'all did much better on the dev, which is what you want to see. You give feedback, students listen, move on. Question 7, I actually copy and pasted this exact sentence from the dev feedback because y'all don't listen. It isn't always appropriate. However, a good rule to consider: 1 mark, 1 sentence. A 7 mark question needs more than 7 words. The other issue, question asked you to reference both sources. So in what ways did threats from the Pacific War impact Australia's safety and the relationship with other countries? Some of y'all only talked about Australia's safety. Some of y'all only talked about relationship with other countries. And it means both. In your response, refer to both sources and your own prior knowledge. This one was a bit tricky because technically there were 3 sources. Technically we gave you 2 text and 1 image. I didn't take marks off if you only referenced one of these text sources and the image, but you needed to reference at least 2 out of 3 of the sources optioned. Again, a repeat offense. Similar feedback provided after the dev. So I want you guys to really focus on those extended response questions. You need to give me detail. You need to read the question carefully so you reference all the sources. And you need to just read the question carefully, guys. Just more detail, more statistics, more facts, more sentences, more arguments. I'm not going to take marks off if you give me too much information. So as much as you can give me in the time allotted. Another rule that they tell you in exams or big tests is not appropriate for, again, every question, but double the amount of marks it's worth for the amount of minutes you should spend on that question. So if it's a 2 mark question, probably spend 4 or 5 minutes on it. If it's a 7 mark question, you want to spend at least 15, 20 minutes on that question. So if you finish writing after 2 minutes and you've written 2 sentences, don't sit back and chillax. You need to think, oh crap, this isn't enough. What else can I add to this question? But yeah, that's all I'm going to give you in this lesson, guys. Whoops, spoiler for the next lesson. If you have questions about the CAT feedback, or if you have questions about the immigration CAT, what you can do to improve before then, please let me know. Otherwise, best of luck with your revision. Hope you're well, and cheers.